Hello and welcome to Magetalk, the Magetalk Community Podcast. I'm Kalen.
I'm Philip. Got to dab so hard.
Yeah, wait, I think I did it wrong. I don't technically know how to I have not been to a dab training session, but
You ready? This is how you do it.
I have heard, I've seen the youths performing the dab on various, random Reddit videos, but
I dab literally just to annoy my 8-year-old. She thinks I'm so uncool, which is my new favorite pastime, is just to do things that just make her cringe out really
yeah,
hard.
I bet you're really good at being uncool.
Oh my gosh, I'm so good at being uncool.
I
It's
bet
not
you're
even funny.
super good at that. With
I'm
all
so
those,
uncool.
didn't you get Greg from Something Digital to do a dab on?
Yeah, he
on
dabbed so hard in my video to you. Do you remember the video that I sent you a few
I
days ago?
do. Yes,
Remember
yes,
that?
I do.
Yeah, it was
Wait,
a tour of our office,
actually, your
which is
office is
very
really
empty.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
your
it's pretty
office
cool.
looks great.
Yeah, we're expanding. Got a lot of cool things happening at SD. Hiring a lot of folks. Great
That's
growth.
cool.
Yeah.
That's fun times.
Yeah, man. Did you it's, in this economy, I have a whole rant about this. In this economy, if you're not growing, there's something wrong. Even Fiverr just went public, right? Like
That's just,
Fiverr.
that's so funny.
If you're not making money in 2019, there's something very wrong.
Yeah, if you're not going public, I was watching some Jerry Seinfeld stuff recently, and that just I felt like you were delivering like a Jerry Seinfeld bit right there, where you're like, even Fiverr went
Even
public.
even Fiverr. If you look at the list of IPOs recently, this one, like there were a few that stood out to me that I was like, are you serious right now? Let me see, hold on, because really, they're public now. Well, okay,
The list,
Fastly went public, which is
really,
sort of like that's in our world, right?
yeah.
Fastly
That's
went public.
crazy because I mean I think of Fastly as like like a little plug-in to
Well,
to
they're CDN, but they're big
they're
enough to be a public
CDN.
company now. It's
But I'm
crazy.
saying I think of them like when you look at the chart. Oh, sorry, I'm
Oh,
tapping
whoa, whoa,
I'm
whoa,
tapping
whoa.
my microphone by accident. When you look at a chart, that
Yeah,
shows the Magento stack, and you've got all
yeah.
these layers and thing, and then Fastly is just a little slice.
It's a
It's
little
just a
guy.
little tiny
He
slice,
just
but
he just he's just a little
that
guy. He's
that
just a little guy.
that little guy is public.
He's
By the
just a little
way,
guy.
quick housekeeping. What do they say? House cleaning. Quick
House cleaning. Little
house
house cleaning note.
quick housekeeping note. When I look up like this and it looks like I'm looking up to the heavens to receive inspiration, I'm actually just looking up at my monitor that's where my dock is.
Yeah, I
So
can
if you
actually see
ever
I can see it in your glasses, which are super trendy. I love your glasses.
really, well, I can't see
Great,
very far without them.
Yeah.
I need them. So if you wonder why I'm looking up to the heavens like this, that's all that is.
Joseph
But
Leedy in the chat is saying SD's trying to recruit him the other day. False. Wasn't just you. Love you, Joseph. SD's trying to recruit everybody always.
I really almost spit out my. By the way, this
Your
episode
La
is brought
Croix.
to you
What are you
by
drinking?
HEB sparkling water.
Yeah,
Nobody
and
does it
I'm
better
on
than
the
HEB.
La Croix sparkling water pure train as well myself. Look at this.
That's all I do is pound the sparkling waters.
Got to pound them. That's what you got to do.
Except when I'm at In-N-Out eating a double animal style with a pink lemonade.
Yeah, that's. So tell me, hold on. So this isn't in our doc, but you had a blog about it.
Yes.
And so where in your Darwin schedule are you fitting your double animal style?
That is right after. So here's the Darwin schedule. I'm working 3 hours in the morning. I'm coding a solid 2
on your sabbatical. Right.
Sabbatical is The initial form of the sabbatical is kind of mutated. It's
Mm,
transmogrified to the
got it.
current version, which on the sabbatical, I was doing some reading, read this book. It talked about Darwin and some other scientists that were highly productive and they worked this sort of very relaxed schedule. So I said, I'm going to do that. So I've been doing that. So I've actually been working a little bit more. And so I'm working in the mornings, which has
As
been
we yeah, most
great.
people that's what most people do on a sabbatical.
Most that's
True.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm the greatest sabbaticator,
Right.
but
His
but you know,
sabbaticating is subpar.
it's subpar at best. But you know, I did end up with making some slight progress in life.
No, that's
But
great.
anyways,
That's great. I
yeah.
just wanted to get the update because,
So then I do the
yeah,
work, then I walk the dog, then I go to the gym, hit the weights, then I hit the sauna hard for a solid 15. I've been dying to use Asana for like months because this one podcast I listen to is always talking about Asana and all the health benefits.
all the sauna, right.
All this apparently using Asana regularly, like 4 times a week, reduces your mortality risk due to all causes by 40%. So
Wow.
I know you were hoping that I was gonna just like die and that was gonna be your way to get a new podcast co-host for Magetalk, but that is 40% less likely now.
It's 40% less likely. You're 40% more committed now to Magetalk than you've ever been.
Yeah.
I love
So
it.
sorry to burst your bubble. Um, and then
Well,
after the
totally
sauna
okay.
is when we do the in and out.
No, that's, okay. I was wondering where we get if I don't know that I could eat In-N-Out burger after lifting weights and then sweating profusely for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it takes a special sort of constitution.
yeah. Actually, I lied. There was a swimming pool
Uh,
in between those two items. Little bit of swimming pool.
you need the swimming pool because the animal style, straight out of that sauna.
Yeah, that's a bit much. Saunas are so nice though. I mean,
That's great.
I'm really excited about this sauna right now. I could Can we just talk about saunas for this whole episode because
I'm sure. We
that would
could
be
find
great.
a way. Let me ask you this: full naked in the sauna?
Obviously. No, 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 no,
Obviously.
no, no. No, 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 no.
No?
Shorts. No, 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 no. Shorts and
Shorts?
actually
Like a
short
psychopath. Just sitting there in your shorts in the sauna like a madman.
actually shorts and a t-shirt, but then the two other
What?
guys that went in took their shirts off and I was like, "Oh, that's
Dude,
probably what I'm supposed to
yeah,
do."
you're supposed to be in there
But
naked with a
I
towel,
didn't
dude.
I didn't want to copy them, so I just waited it
You
out,
need to
and then
copy them. You really need to copy them. Here's
by the time I got out, my shirt was just a dripping mess.
I know we're never supposed to talk about things that aren't happening in public, but you DM me the other day and you say, "Why is running without a shirt socially unacceptable?" And I'm trying to figure out how the man who wants to run partially naked gets in a sauna fully clothed. Can
Well,
you explain that to me?
I can explain it quite easily, which is that I take a lot of walks, right? And,
Yes, you do.
I'm not quite at your level where I can pull off the like no shirt on or
Okay.
like it's do you have a six pack yet? If not, you're
I have
probably very
I
close.
have a 4 and 3/4 Happy Meal.
Okay, there you go. Okay. So what I was trying to understand, there's kind of a line, right? There's a line where you can pull it off. Like if you see a guy that is in great shape running with their shirt off, it's no big deal. It's like, and but then there's a
Kind of like,
line.
cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers to you, my friend.
you're like, cheers to you.
Looking that's good. Good for
But
you. You should do that.
but so the reason I wanted to do it was to work on the tan while I'm walking, hit two birds with one stone. But
Oh.
I can't really pull it off quite yet. So I don't know if it's, I don't want to cross lines that weren't meant to be crossed is all I'm trying to
The
say.
the tan, you're working on they actually kind of reinforce each other, actually. Now this makes total sense.
You see,
So,
I
if
told you
you
this
were to
made sense
sit
in
in
the
the
beginning.
sauna with
Yeah.
your shirt off You'd be self-conscious because you don't have the tan.
No, no. Well, no,
No.
I'm totally doing that tomorrow. I just wasn't prepared.
You need to go. All right,
I'm
report
not
back.
self-conscious in a private, in a private setting in a sauna,
Mm.
but if you go out into public and you're walking by random people and kids are getting scared because they're seeing how pale you are, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to scare anybody.
All right, let me just in summation, it's a lot like public speaking, right?
Okay.
If you're standing in front of 1,000 people, it's not as intimidating as standing in front of 20 people because you can see all their faces and you see what they're looking. That's how you feel about being naked in public. If you're naked
uh,
in front of hundreds of people, you know, in Round Rock just running around crazy naked, no big deal. Being naked in front of 3 men in a sauna, that's a big problem.
I don't know what saunas you hang out at, but
The naked ones. Of course. I had this
Showtime.
I had this
Listen,
really interesting revelation the other day. So I was looking for local 5Ks, like local runs,
okay,
and one popped up on my radar. There's a place called Sunsport Gardens that has a annual 5K that's not too far from my house. Oh, let me check that out. There's a 5K. It's like a mile and a half from my house.
okay.
It says
Right.
on the sign, it says naturalist commune.
You're in Florida, man. So it that
Which
like
that means nudist colony,
right,
right?
right.
Can you
Are
even
you
imagine doing a 5K in the Brent Peterson needs to organize
Brett's the
that
type of dude.
run. The
Brett's
big
the type
damn run would
Brett's
take
the
on a
type of
whole new
dude.
meaning.
Yeah, he yeah. Yeah, he would yeah, Brent would do that. Brett's not
Brent would
trying
to
to.
I think Brent, like, of all the people in the Magento community, Brent is the most likely. We should give out awards every year.
No,
Most likely to organize a nude 5K, Brent Peterson.
I'm not even I'm not even kidding. We should seriously do Mage Talk Awards.
We
We'd have
should.
a yearly Mage Talk Awards ceremony with serious ones, funny ones, everything in between.
I love it.
Obviously, it'll be sponsored by HEB Sparkling Water.
It could be sponsored by people who actually pay us money, but just as to really up the irony, it's brought to you by Kalen's local sauna and HEB sparkling water.
Yeah. All right.
I
Let's
I
get
see what
into
you're doing,
the.
by the way. I'm trying I see you're trying to throw a lot of things out there to get the banana focus off of you.
Oh God, that's what I was gonna say. My feed, my Twitter feed has become nothing but banana memes. Some of them are funny, some of them are cute, some of them are outright disgusting, like a hot dog with a banana, hot dog bun with it's getting at it. So if that wasn't bad enough, things are gonna get a lot worse with the naked sauna runs and the naked 5K. Things are about to get wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Y
Um, things
you
are
you tune in for the Magento banter and you stay for the naked sauna bananas.
yeah.
It's
Um, that might be a new that might be a new phrase that's never been uttered before.
I they say everything that's ever been that will ever exist exists somewhere within the number pi. Like, pi is infinite and non-repeating, so just by, all the works, the collective works of Shakespeare somewhere within pi, and by the way, the
That's really
phrase
interesting. I've never heard that before. That's
"naked
wild.
sauna banana" is also contained somewhere within
Somewhere
pi.
within pi.
Yeah,
That's really neat. I've never heard that before.
yeah. You should actually check that out. There's this really interesting YouTube channel I watch sometimes called, Numberphile,
Mm.
which talks about the video that really got me into watching Numberphile is a video about the different types of infinity.
Oh
So
yeah.
there's like infinity that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then forever, right?
Yes, I know. Yep.
But then there's the infinity, because you were a math major. Then
Yep.
there's the infinity that is 1.1, 1.001,
And it
1.0001.
contains the first
Exactly.
infinity
So
is
infinite
contains.
sets of infinities, which is
Yeah.
pretty much entirely every banana meme on this show is pretty much that.
Infinite sets of infinite. I didn't. I
Infinite
don't.
sets of infinities, like banana memes within banana memes, just continuing on forever. That's the life you live now, Kalen.
In related news, there's been launched an extension developer rewards program.
That's true.
Philip, what are your thoughts on this exciting, innovative program?
Um, well, let's give context.
By the way, I saw this on a slide, Meet Magento Germany slide, extension developer rewards. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know if this is a Meet Magento Germany thing or an official Magento thing. I just didn't
No, it's
get
a
a
Magento
ton of
thing.
context. Okay,
This was announced in
that's what I thought.
Imagine, sort
Okay,
of.
cool. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So, um, high quality, low refund extensions, compatibility with latest M2 versions. Some of the benefits to join the rewards program: rev share, cash back, free technical consulting by Magento architects, free Imagine tickets, discounted programs, and more. So I think that without knowing a ton about it, I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool for them to be um, I was looking up to the heavens that whole time, right? I think it's really cool for them to be incentivizing extension developers in that way. So
It sounds like so it's when you think about the bar to clear to be eligible for the reward program, um, so they have to be high quality extensions that have some track record of not asking for refunds on a continual basis. You have to always support the latest version of Magento 2. I'm saying all the things you said, but just to put it in the context. Um, you have to have test coverage with the submission to the Magento App Store, you know, the
yep,
extension store, and it has to be compatible with cloud.
right.
Um, and it looks like community contributions is just a bullet there. I'm not really sure what that means. Maybe you have to show that other people are contributing to it. Maybe it has to be open source. I don't know. Um, which makes me wonder how you can prove a rev share cashback. Like you're doing a rev share on stuff that you're selling that other people contributed to. I like that's not doesn't make so much sense to me.
That bullet point needs further definition.
Yeah, community contributions, I guess maybe by the developer, like you have to be a good contributor to the community at large, or I don't know what it means, but
It's a
I like the
mysterious
idea. I
bullet
want to
point.
reward people for positive for positive. The thing is, here's the thing, Kalen. A lot of people just decided flat out that they were going to go direct to consumer and they don't need to be in the app store, right?
Yeah, I know a guy that
Yeah.
went that way.
Yeah.
No, a couple guys.
You know a few guys. Um, yeah, so I don't know. It's an interesting trend. Or an interesting thing that they're trying to make a trend.
Yeah,
Um,
I wonder if this is a little bit more geared towards maybe the smaller indie extension developers.
yeah, possibly,
Obviously,
yeah. Try to drive a little more value out of it.
the larger SaaS companies, I'd imagine, that are big tech partners, probably don't necessarily. I don't know. I don't know who this is geared towards, but it looks like it'll be interesting. So we'll be watching. We'll be watching and waiting to see how that goes.
Hmm.
It's
Well,
so, fu-
well,
it's so funny when I look.
as Kalen looks up to the heavens. Um, yeah, I know there's a lot of people who are big proponents of, you know, the extension developer program for the Magento extension marketplace. So, uh, yeah. So actually, speaking of extensions, Eric Heilman had tweeted from as Kalen looks up toward the heavens. He had tweeted that he had a conversation recently where the here I'll actually pull it up because it's actually important just to know to say it very specifically. So he had a conversation with some folks from Adobe, Steve Zurich and Talesh C. Parson, about building an auto patcher for Magento 2 security updates, which is similar to WordPress. And if you've ever used WordPress, the idea that you can just go in and update the core to the most recent point release is like that's been in WordPress for, I don't know, a decade, I don't know, 4 or
Yeah.
5 years at least. Updating WordPress has been trivial for a very long time, and it sounds like there's uh, some offer there for a few, longtime community members to gather around this idea that, they would sponsor that. And, Eric Heilman is the CEO of Mage Mojo, and Mojo Stratus is a sponsor of Magetalk in full transparency. But this would be phenomenal. It should be trivial for store owners to update their store, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. That's the end of
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, then the question is, how easy will it be to deploy this safely, um, to production? For example, how would you is this more targeted at clients that don't have, let's say, a solutions partner that they're working with that's taking care of these things for them? Would this support, both types of merchants? Because if this, for example, for, let's say, a client that you would work with where you've got version control, deployment pipelines and stuff like that, would you be interested in this kind of thing, or do you see this being more useful towards the lower end of the market?
Um, I'm not sure who it's for because it doesn't actually exist yet. I think this is good in general, and I'll tell you one thing I would love a whole lot is to see things like this take work out of the hands of systems integrators like Something Digital.
Mhm.
We don't want to do things like this, right? Like I don't want to charge people money to update their core. But in WordPress, when you go in and you push the button, you better be darn well sure. Like there's a whole program that goes along with this to show you the verified compatibility of each of your extensions with
Yeah.
the most recent version, right?
Yeah.
And you have to have a way to roll back if it goes awry and disable extensions if they're causing problems. Like, so
Okay.
it's not easy to do. So if
Okay.
Magento does it right, it's going to be complicated.
Okay.
But there's a world in which if upgrades were trivial, then the things that companies like Something Digital, that who I work for, would focus on are the more strategic things that we should be focused on, and not the
Higher
plumbing.
value, higher value stuff. Yeah.
Right, because that's the stuff that actually grows your business. Nobody wants to. And I've said this many times now, and I've gotten some flack for it, but like spending money on hygiene, spending money on things that you have to spend money on takes away from the things that actually, help companies like ours prove our value to you,
Yeah.
right? Because part of that spend is being redirected elsewhere. That's why platforms like Shopify have a um, really strong value to a merchant because they don't have to think about anything. They never have to think about security updates. They never have to think about hosting. They only have to think about downtime when all of Google is down for the whole world. So it's not like anyone could find your site anyway,
Yeah.
because they're on Google Cloud Platform. But um, in general, they think less about that stuff, and they're being told they have to do those things less, and they spend less money on that, and then they spend more money on things like really annoying exit intents, like bounce exchange that just pop up every time you're trying to get off the site. And believe it or not, those things actually translate to revenue. and um, but those are the kinds of things like tactics like lead back campaigns, email marketing, um, paid search, ad spend, social. Those things are the things that actually make other people that you're not already engaged with aware of your brand. And that's what you need today, right? To be
Yeah.
successful. It's what you need. So if you're spending money on patching all the time, every quarter, every third month, you're spending money to be in business. Yeah, that's a problem. So
Yeah. I
I hope
mean,
it's for everybody, right?
yeah. I mean, I was thinking of it more of a simple, more simplified version of it. But now that you mentioned checking things like extension compatibility and all that kind of thing, and back in the day, I tried to create pretty much exactly that with Mage Update.
Ooh.
Mageupdate.com. And although I did some work around finding core core hacks and making it easy to see those and
Mm.
fix them and stuff, and some tooling around making some tooling that would support developers in resolving core hacks. But yeah, the whole extension compatibility side of it is excuse me, is super cool. That'd be freaking awesome.
WordPress
So
has that sort of built into a bunch of different places in its updater. So it does have a customer or like end user level ability to update the core, but they don't just stop there. There's also, if you do update it and something goes wrong, because stuff goes wrong, right?
mhm.
And something goes wrong, then and you get locked out, then what do? Right? You have half of an upgrade complete and or an extension is incompatible with the upgrade that you just did complete. How do you get back? So then you have to update, WordPress has the WP CLI tool, and that has to have the ability to also execute upgrades and rollbacks and disabling extensions, etc. So
Yep.
yeah, it could be a complex thing to enact. It sounds like a really good community engineering program um, thing to contribute to. Uh, I really hope that we see sponsorship of that, and I'd love for a company like Mage Mojo to do it. Lord knows we still need folks like them in the ecosystem, because it's not just all about cloud hosting with Magento. It takes a big ecosystem to make you know and a big developer ecosystem to make us all successful. We all need to be successful, right? So I love when they get some praise. And by the way, full disclosure, Mage Mojo is a sponsor of Mage Talk.
Go check them out at magemojo.com. I think I clicked on the link to the YouTube video, which was the next topic, and
Oh
then
yeah.
I closed the window, and then my Bluetooth headset lost your audio,
Oh no. Do you
which
have it back now?
so you're coming over the speaker, so I don't know if there's
No, I
feedback, but
don't.
I'm gonna try to
Okay.
reconnect. But what was that YouTube video that you put in there, preventing
Yeah.
collapse of civilization?
Preventing the collapse of civilization. There is a video that I saw on YouTube which resonated with me. It was posted about a month ago, and I've had it in an open tab, as I am wont to do, to leave it open for many months before I actually get a chance to finish it. So it's about an hour long. It's a guy named Jonathan Blow. He's a developer. I think he's a game developer. And he gave a talk, I believe, in Russia at DevGam in back in May 2019, and his talk was all about how technology um, is lost over time. And he talks about all sorts of really interesting examples from prior civilizations. Like, have you ever heard of the Antikythera mechanism?
Sounds somewhat familiar,
So
but
it's basically an analog computer that did like astronomical position and eclipse and calendar uh, prediction that
oh,
was sort of meant to track the 4-year cycle of like Olympic Games. And it was a Greek analog computer, and it was entirely mechanical.
mm,
Go check this out. Uh, it's an artifact that still exists from ancient Greece that is 2,000 years old, and it is stunningly complex.
wow.
And we tend to think that over time, our knowledge of prior generations, we tend to believe we're more advanced than they are. But in actuality, he sort of proves, and you sort of have to take his word for it on a couple of occasions, but he gives some pretty good examples of ancient civilizations that had technology and complex technology and lost it for one reason or another.
Mm,
And he starts to make the case that as we lower complexity in computing and make it more friendly and more accessible to more people, that the complexity gets lost, and the art of making things efficient and making them and driving progress forward actually is lost over time. So now we have these very tall stacks that have JSX and inside of React is a good example, because it's React, but then So JSX has its own syntax, and that's compiled down to JavaScript, which is interpreted at runtime in a browser, which is running some C++ optimized code, which then is eventually makes its way down to some sort of machine language, which has some process set instructions that are simplified by our Pentium processors. It gets the at one point in time, you only wrote assembly code that was executed directly on the processor, and now we're here, right?
Mhm.
And the idea is that over time, we'll lose the ability, because history repeats itself, that eventually we lose the ability to actually create complex organisms or complex uh, ecosystems and complex things like CPUs and processors and coprocessors and things like that become trades of art that are lost over time to generations because people don't actually work on the complex part of it anymore. They
Mhm.
actually become dumb over time. And when you watch this, it's actually pretty chilling because I think it really mirrored a complexity argument that we've been making in the Magento ecosystem for a little while, and how we can make Magento more like an ecosystem that has broad adoption and people can get a lot done in Magento without needing
Man,
to understand how things
that's a
work.
deep analogy you're drawing there, man.
Well, it goes along with the Linux analogy that I think Vinay had poked back at me about. He listened recently, and
Yeah, I saw that tweet. I'm really curious what his
so
deal
a
is
couple
gonna be on
episodes
that.
ago, for those who hadn't checked it out, I think it was in episode 197. I had been thinking about how I'm a Linux user for 20 years, and I've used Linux, and I've written some Bash myself, and I do that with frequency. I use Linux every day,
And you
but I
still
don't.
don't remember the argument order for creating symbolic links, right?
Yeah, I don't remember the argument order for tar and untar either. Like, great example of how we get dumber over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I'm a consumer. I'm a user of Linux, but I don't know how it works. I have no idea how memory works. I have no idea how kernels work.
Right.
I know those are things, but I don't know how they work. I So V and I had a particular uh, take on it, saying that the analogy is a little off. The analogy or the metaphor is that someone using a web browser, shopping on a Magento store, is the analogy of me using Linux, because really the thing I'm doing is using an interface of an application that's written to run on Linux. I'm not using Linux. I'm using applications that run on Linux, and I kind of like that. I think that metaphor is quite apt.
Okay.
Um, and he's right, right? I'm not a core Linux developer, and I'm not a contributor. I'm yet one more level removed because I'm not a contributor to Bash or to Z Shell or to any of those that are also open source projects
Right.
that make it all work. So I think that's a really interesting sort of metaphor that I think deepens my argument, which is I use Linux in some way as a consumer, but I don't actually know how it works. And I've been making the argument that I'm hoping Magento gets to that direction where we can have broader adoption to make sites faster and more interactive, more faster for cheaper.
Yeah.
Because I think adoption will be better as a broader ecosystem. But I think this is a great anti-argument. Like, it's the opposite argument, that the more that we do that, the more at risk we are of losing the overall knowledge of how to do complex things, right?
Okay, so many thoughts here. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
on the analogy, I think that yeah, he's right in the sense that you're a Linux user, not a Linux developer. But I think the way in which your original analogy holds up is that although we use Linux as users, we use it as we use it as creators. So whereas somebody using a web browser, browsing a Magento site is not using it as a creator, they're purely consuming it. Whereas even as a quote Linux user, we're creating bash scripts, we're
Right.
creating cron jobs, we're doing lots of creative development activities. Whichever way you take the analogy, I mean the point can still kind of hold up. Secondly, I have to say something about the archaeological, the
Anti-Kythera.
anti-Kythera thing.
Right.
And then after that, I still want to know what the original thrust of preventing the collapse of civilization was. If was the idea that by losing touch with understanding the underlying, like being able to create the underlying mechanisms, the CPUs, the assembly code, losing touch with those, and then having those skills lost over generations is how civilization would ultimately collapse.
Correct. The argument is, by the way, if I were running this conference, I would have argued that he needed to change the talk title,
Yeah.
because I think the talk title doesn't actually it suggests that he's got a means of preventing that,
Oh,
right? Like, here's what we do to prevent that from happening, because but he doesn't actually, he just makes the argument that this is the track we're on.
okay.
So I think the real talk title should have been "Civilization is Collapsing." Right? But I think the point is that, yeah, in a world where we're kind of facing climate change and we see, natural disasters like we do, and we have nuclear threat, and we have hostility and, global tensions, and people, poking superpowers with trade wars, and it doesn't take a whole lot. One nuclear bomb is all it's gonna take for for us to have basically lost all knowledge of how to create complex things and have to start over to some degree.
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah,
kind of a
sometimes
scary thought, right?
yeah, sometimes I think about that. I'm like, as a developer, as a person that makes their living through the internet, like if something went south when like large portions of the internet went dark, would my like skills be at all useful, or would I just be like clubbed to death by like 6'5" tall dudes that work construction, and like
Yeah,
my skills would have zero use whatsoever.
totally.
That's why I'm trying
There's
to.
a whole other argument, which, by the way, we covered on Future Commerce recently, which is this notion that humanity is technology is changing our evolutionary course. If you read the book Homo Deus, which I think is really intriguing. Which, did you read that, by the way?
No, I think I read the other one, Sapiens,
Yeah, Homo
by
Deus. Yeah.
the same author, but yeah, you recommended that one to me. That
Homo
I gotta
Deus
check
is
that
like
out.
what it's yeah, Homo sapiens is like our history till now, and Homo Deus is like our history of tomorrow, which hasn't happened yet, but it's on that same sort of brain train. Uh, Yuval Noah Harari, I think, is the name of the author.
That guy is a mind bender. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh, dude,
yeah.
makes you question everything that you ever thought. But Um, and it was really tough to get through that book, like, really tough, because
Should have
there's
listened
just
to
so
it
much.
as an audiobook. It's
Yeah. So, anyway, uh, he kinda goes on to this whole train about humanity, technology actually causing sort of this evolutionary event. Evolution does happen sort of over time and slowly, but there are sort of, bursts of evolutionary leaps forward that happen, like, in other organisms, and we can sort of see that in nature in other ways.
mm,
And there's the argument that the recent spike of autism, or people on an autistic spectrum, is the evolutionary leap forward for humanity, because we're less prone, like, those are people that are less prone to emotion. They're more technologically savvy, they're more gifted in certain areas. Communication is very, is very an emotional, not emotional, but it's emotion, like, it's lacking emotion.
mm,
they're
mm.
they're just they are more prone to survive the large, um, information overflow that you get from the crowd that we're surrounded with, rather than the small, evolutionary train we've been on with
Like,
very
they'd be less susceptible to fake news, less
right,
susceptible to kill each other with nuclear bombs, that kinda
right.
that's an interesting
It's an interesting thought. I
that's
don't
an
know that I
interesting idea.
subscribe to it, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting argument.
Now, here's
Yeah.
what I have to say about the anti-Kythera. So, okay, so the dude's like an archaeologist. So, here's my thing with archaeologists is that their job essentially is to tell an interesting story about something
Oh, sure.
way back in the past, right? So they, like and it's always interesting. Like I was fascinated when he started talking about it. I'm sure if I watched it, I'd be totally drawn in, like, oh, this is awesome. But then I take a step back and I go, okay, wait a second, guys. So there's something with a couple of gears, and they could use it to, like, plot some dates. Like that, like this is not anywhere on the same level of technological sophistication. Like they want to make an argument that, like, oh yeah, like thousands of years ago things were actually really complex. It's like, no, they weren't. Like yeah, it's cool, it's definitely neat, but like, come on, like this is not like, this is not AWS we're looking at. This is like a stone with like three
Sure.
gears inside of it. but
Yeah.
but but I do think it's fascinating, and I'm always fascinated by hearing that type of a story. But I feel like that's kind of their job, is to take something from the past and weave an interesting story around it. But I
Sure.
don't know. I don't know if I
And it's
buy it.
people like you who will cause us to lose all of this knowledge. I'm just kidding.
That's harsh. Harsh.
I find it interesting though, because the taller the stack gets, and the less that we have to work with the core in Magento, one could make a reasoned argument that no one really needs to touch EAV anymore unless you're a core Magento developer. Like the simpler it becomes to just click a button and things just work.
Yeah.
And the more that we have, data visualization tools that are baked in, the less we need to write direct SQL, and the less we understand the data structure of how Magento works in the first place. And I think you can make an argument that if you keep extending that, eventually you get to a point where there's only a handful of people who actually truly understand how Magento works in the next decade, right?
Yeah.
As Magento's install base grows, you'll have more consumers of Magento, but maybe fewer people that actually understand the core and what the core tenets of core programming are, because they
Yeah.
need to interact with it much less.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I
Not a
could
bad
see
thing.
how in theory you could make that argument, but in practice, I mean, look at something like CPU design, which we're probably what 50, 70 years deep on CPU design. It's highly specialized. 0.01% of people like us that are technical could ever have a prayer of understanding how to design a CPU, but it there it gets done. There's a segment of the industry that does it extraordinarily well, and everything's great. Like everything's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, but we're what,
Agree
one
to disagree.
generation away from we're one generation away from throwing all those schematics in front of AI, and AI designing CPUs for us,
Right.
and
Right.
humans not having to worry about silicon anymore,
Right.
right? Like we're not so far away from losing that. It doesn't take much, right? It,
Yep.
that's the point that's being made. It's not of like truly where we are, it's where we might be going.
Yeah. Yeah.
At any rate, I'm waiting for a world where I don't have to care about UI components. That's all I'm saying. All right?
Right.
Please, let's crash civilization. If I don't have to worry about require JS at all ever, and it only costs all of human civilization to get there,
It's fine.
bring it on.
Fine by us. Real quick, there's some tweets around Varnish I want to mention.
They're a public company. Fastly. Varnish is a service.
Yeah.
Hey, Fastly,
So
if you wanna sponsor a podcast, let us know.
check us out, by the way. You really want to check us out.
This
But
guy's friggin'
so
in the sauna. He's looking all
there was
sweaty and sexy.
again
Definitely not naked. Go ahead, sir.
this one guy, Erland 80, with Serve Bolt, Serve Bolt at Serve Bolt.
At Serple?
I think it's a hosting company called Serve Bolt. Anyways, he was criticizing the Varnish integration with Magento. Ben Marks CC'd a guy in whose name is spelled THIJS. I think its name is this or the. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that. It's a dope name. It's just like this. THIGS FERYN, this Farron, who is a tech evangelist for Varnish. And he jumped right into the thread and was talking about how it's one of his personal goals to improve varnish caching for Magento. And he was super accessible. He said, "Hey, let's get in touch. I want to hear more," and was saying some of the things that he wants to work on are better VCL, varnish config, and retrieve and parse session data in Varnish through Redis or Memcached. Anyway, so I thought it was he seemed like a good dude, and he was really accessible and jumping into the conversation. So if you are working with Varnish, working through issues, he seems like he'd be a great contact to have. And his Twitter handle is at THIJSFERYN. So yeah, and then what else
Yeah.
are we got a couple of minutes left here, but oh, this was cool. So somebody tweeted, um they were like, "Hey," out of nowhere, they're like, "Hey, is there anything like the custom reports extension that Kalen built for M1 but for M2, also known as
Risky reports?
risky reports?"
Right.
Allows you to define arbitrary SQL queries that generate reports and tables and charts within your Magento backend. And anyways, so I had forgotten that DEG put one out, sort of inspired by the M1 version, put out an M2 version. So that's available if you're looking for that.
That's
Um,
awesome. Huh.
yeah.
I didn't know that. 2 years ago, they put that out.
Yeah, and it's funny because after the fact, I had completely forgotten about it. I remembered that I think Ben had hit me up about it and said, "Hey, do you mind if we set that up?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, this sounds awesome."
Ben Roby.
Ben Roby, yeah, with
Yeah.
DEG.
Freaking
So
love that guy.
yeah, so you can check that out. GitHub.com/DEG digital slash Magento 2 dash custom reports.
Yeah, that we'll link it up in the show notes, which, by the way, our show notes get a lot of love.
Oh my gosh, dude.
I'm hearing from more and more people how
I
much they
am
love our show notes.
legitimately hearing from more and more people. Jordan is hilarious. The notes are super funny.
Friggin' incredible.
He puts
He's a rock
tweets,
star. That guy's
embeds.
that guy is a rock star, like, for real. Have you heard him sing?
No,
It's
he
insane.
can sing
Yeah.
because I know he was into acting and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's in a theater company, and, he was just in, Spring Awakening. They put on
I
a
think
revival of Spring Awakening, and, yeah, he's amazing. Truly incredible.
we should um we should have him on the show.
You know what? Like, Jordan, can you just rewrite the Magetalk theme and just sing over it? Just do it.
Just do it. Just make it happen.
Magetalk, we're talking about Magetalk. Do that, something like that. Give me something in that vein, like a doo-wop,
Yeah,
like a
I can dig it. I can dig it. Um,
yeah.
I can
But,
totally dig that.
hit it, rockapella, you know? Like a
Yeah.
Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah, something
But
with
with
a nice
bananas and Kalen and saunas.
yeah, something with a nice mid-range, some nice highs and some mids.
My favorite. I love it.
That's, you're gonna have to listen to the last episode to get that
Yeah,
reference.
get on the episode 197. That'll catch you up to speed. Catch you up to speed real fast. You want me to take a stab at the last one?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I had mentioned a couple things which people may or may not have seen. I talked to someone recently who is kind of like this phenom developer who I recently met through our co-working community in West Palm Beach here, and he was kind of like hemming and hawing because I'd asked him about his background and how he got to doing what he's doing. He's like, "Oh, I came through a code boot camp, but like, yeah, not really proud of that." I'm like, "Why are
Mm,
you not proud of that? Like, who cares if you were waiting tables 12 months ago? That's freaking awesome. Like, good for you."
mhm,
And I was thinking about that when I kind of left that conversation. I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember feeling that way about being self-taught,
mhm,
right, as a developer." And I remember also feeling that way about having been homeschooled for part of my, for part of my school life, through middle school and part of high school. And, I kind of just kind of hit me. It was like, why are we ashamed of where we've come from? Like, as if we had any
Mm.
control over some things that happened in our life along the way. Like, you are where you are because you got there, and you should be proud of how you, like, no matter how you got there, you should be proud of where you are. And yeah, I feel like we could show each other more support by saying things like that. Because yeah, I thought I'd just put that out there into the world, because it just kind of hit home with me, because I feel like sometimes I do downplay, where I've come from.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes other people might feel the same and might be encouraged to know, I know you were homeschooled, right?
No.
Full-time, full-time homeschooler. No.
No. No, no,
Yeah.
I was a public school guy, but
Yeah.
we're,
But you
you know,
homeschool
we're
your kids.
we're homeschooling
Yeah.
I saw a post recently that was there's this really cool subreddit on homeschooling, and I saw this great post that was really inspiring by a woman that had just recently gotten into college, and what her experience had been, and it was great. It was just really really encouraging. It can be a great path.
Yeah.
And it can also be very challenging path, I'm sure, for a lot of people. So it's definitely a little bit of a different way to do things. I think 3% of people homeschool these days. I believe it is on the rise, but
Mm.
yeah, it's still pretty unique.
But
But no, but
I
to
just
your
think that
to,
you shouldn't be ashamed of where you've come from, right? Like,
yeah, yeah. No, I
we
mean that's a really great point that you make. I know we all feel that way about ourselves in different ways, and
I think that, not to belittle it in any way, because I know that you can certainly take away from real issues in society, and this is
Mhm.
not a real issue in society. But I do think part of diversity in large groups of people is people that have differing backgrounds.
Mm,
And I think that we are richer as a community to have people of various and sundry backgrounds, to have a community with people who have come from comp sci, who, have doctorates and have masters, and but to also have a community of people that are self-taught, and have a community of people from code boot camps. Like, it takes a lot of people to make up a broad and vast community, and we all have unique life experience that we can learn from each other in some way,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, it can be tempting, I think, for once you get into kind of an in group and you get a level of authority to sort of, if somebody's not in that in group, you want to kind of downplay, their abilities, or maybe like not take them seriously. But yeah, we should respect everybody, and a lot of times if somebody is from a different perspective or worldview, they can have a fresh perspective on a given problem, and where maybe those of us that have been staring at that same problem in the same way for a long time don't have a fresh perspective on it.
Right.
um so
Cool.
cool stuff, guys. Well, why
Well,
don't you take us home, Phil?
thanks for listening. Go give us a 5-star everywhere podcasts are found. Keep tweeting bananas at Kalen, but if you can find some new sauna content or naked 5Ks, let's see
Please,
that as well.
please, no,
Although
no.
he's very flattered that you think about him all the time.
This is
He'd
true.
really like you to stop sending bananas.
This is very true.
But thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks
Have
for
a good
listening to
one.
Magetalk.
TTYL.
Bye.